to thank the English department and the Student Fee Council for sponsoring the reading this evening. Also want to thank some of the people that helped make this happen, including Shannon Spear, Jamie McDaniel for videotaping, Jeremy Johnson for videotaping, helping with transportation. Like a lot of people doing the little things that have to happen to make an event like this take place. Another thing that needs to happen is we all need to turn off our cell phones. So let's take a moment to do that, please. It is, whether you know it or not, it is really distracting if a phone rings or someone is texting during a reading, so please take a moment to turn this off. I also want to point out that there's a reception after the reading right across the hallway in the Heritage Room. There'll be some good food, some things to drink, all free, so go in, have a snack. You'll also have a chance to say hello to our visiting writer if you'd like to, maybe purchase one of his books, have him sign it if you'd like. So please do join us for the reception afterwards. I also want to make an announcement that the Pitt State Student Literary and Arts magazine, the Cow Creek Review, will soon be publishing its new edition for this year. And there will be a publication party and an awards ceremony for those who have won some writing prizes. That happens a week from today, next Thursday at 6 p.m. over in Axe Library down in the ground floor. So next Thursday at 6. You're all invited to come and hear some of your fellow students read from their work and pick up a copy of the magazine. Our featured reader tonight is Lowell Mick White, who currently teaches at Texas A&M University, where he also earned a PhD in English in 2010. However, we in the English department are very excited that Mick will be joining the Pitt State faculty this fall, so he's going to become one of us. He's going to be a gorilla very shortly, whether he knows it or not. He'll be joining us to teach courses in literature, fiction writing, and introductory creative writing. And Mick, I want to say we really do look forward to having you join us now, not just as a visitor next time, but as a friend and colleague. Mick has published both fiction and some poetry in a wide range of literary journals, including Callaloo, Iron Horse, and Short Story. He's also the author of 2 books, a short story collection called Long Time Ago Good, and a novel, That Demon Life, that won the Gaval Press Novel Award. And a new book coming out soon?
Yeah, probably at the end of the year.
A book finished, but still in the process of being published this year. So we can look forward to that. Additionally, Mick was awarded Adobe Paisano Fellowship by the University of Texas at Austin and the Texas Institute of Letters. And I also wanted to add that aside from his writing life, Mick has had several interesting jobs. He's worked as a cab driver, a tree salesman. Trees seem like things that you shouldn't buy and sell, but you do. You can go to Home Depot.
Magnolia trees.
Magnolia trees.
Yeah, there was a really good kickback from the store for selling magnolia.
Magnolia, okay. And bonus for magnolias. Who would have known? So lots of interesting jobs, including a stint as an employee of the Internal Revenue Service, which seems especially appropriate to mention the week of April 15th. Additionally, Mick is also currently a National Endowment for the Arts Artist in Residence at the Federal Prison in Bryan, Texas. So quite interesting work there, teaching creative writing workshops to prisoners in the prison system. And finally, on his website, Mick says that his goal as a writer is, quote, to write about how we live in America and how we came to live this way, with all the ridiculosities, absurdities, and vexations that our lives entail. I'm not sure tonight whether we're going to have ridiculosity, absurdity, or vexation, or all of the above, or none of the above, but we're going to have something good. So please join me in welcoming Lowell Mick White.
Can y'all hear me? Is this decent? You can't hear? What?
It's not loud.
No. Hello. I can't bend over like that. I'm not a...
I don't know.
We may be able to turn the...
Yeah, I'm not even here working yet. I'm already causing trouble. About that. Is this better?
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I want to thank you, Chris, for that really kind introduction. And I want to thank everybody in the English department and here in the town of Pittsburgh for being incredibly welcoming and to me during my brief visit here. I got in yesterday and then was here in December for a couple of days. It just looks like I'm going to have a lot of friends here and a lot of really good students. I'm looking forward to coming here, and I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. This is very kind. I'm going to read a couple of stories, and maybe if I have some time, a piece of the novel, but I'm going to do a couple of short stories. It was a meeting today of a class and talking about how stories can be based on life, and actually probably should be based on life experiences, and how that brings out an extra level of strength in your stories. And so I'm going to read, the first story I'm going to read is called Guts. It's from a story collection. And a lot of times you like thinking of writers being brilliant and being genius. They sit down and dash off the old masterpiece. Guts is a story that took about 23 years to write. The story behind it is, I was an undergraduate at the University of Texas in 1979. Summer session, it was August, it was hot, I was taking some classes. And I went out to where my truck was parked. I used to have an old 75 Chevy. And went out to where my truck was parked, and I had a flat tire. Sad. I will say that I've had more flat tires than anybody I've ever known. It could be my driving, or it could be just I drive in bad places. But you know, usually you get a flat tire, you change the tire. Well, I couldn't do that. I'm driving on the spare. So what to do? Well, I'll get a hold of my roommate. This is days before cell phones. So I decided I'll walk home, which was about, I don't know, 4 miles, 5 miles. We lived south of the river then. And let's go find my roommate and get some fix a flat, or maybe a new spare, who knows, do something about it. And instead of taking the bus, I decided to walk, because I was young and kind of stupid. And, you know, because it's 100 degrees out. So I was around, the parking lot was around 22nd and Red River, which is 22 blocks north of the river. And so I walked down Red River Street. It was downhill most of the way, but it is 100 degrees out. I got down to 9th and Red River, and there was a tavern there called Don Politico's, which was a real interesting little bar. It was run by a guy named Bill, who was Don Politico. He collected Texas political memorabilia, and the whole interior of the bar was yard signs and banners and things going back in Texas politics back to the 1930s. It was on the ceilings, the walls, there's layers and layers of it. It was really a fascinating place. So I wanted to get out of the heat, have a beer. So I went inside. There's 2 people in the bar besides Bill. There was a drunk guy sitting at the bar, and another guy sort of in the back playing pinball. So I ordered a Budweiser, and I sat down at the bar, and the drunk guy at the bar started talking religion to me. And he's going, "You're going to come back to the Mother Church. Believe me, that's what the Mother Church is for." And you know, I'm not a Catholic, so I can't really return, so I don't know. It made me uncomfortable. So I moved down the bar a little bit. Then the pinball guy finished playing pinball, and he came over and sat down. And it turns out he was the humor columnist for the Austin newspaper, a guy named John Kelso. And he had been selected to be the celebrity judge at a chitlins cook-off the next day. And so he was drinking the heart out of that afternoon too, complaining about his fate. 100 degrees and all those steaming cauldrons of hog guts that he was going to have to deal with. And so I just listened to his story, and then I went on. I walked the rest of the way home, and I guess I found my roommate, and we got to fix a flat, and we got my truck running again. Years later, probably around 1993, I was taking a summer workshop at the University of Iowa, a 2-week writing workshop, and the instructor was a guy named W.P. Kinsella, who's a novelist and short story writer. He's best known for a novel called Shoeless Joe, which is made into the movie Field of Dreams. And it was a 2-week workshop, and we were going to workshop stories we'd already written. But he also gave us an assignment, come up with the beginning of a short story by the end of the 2 weeks. And he was going to give us a title, we'd come up with the story. And the title he gave us was Bad Guts. I remember one of my classmates wrote a piece about, the first line was, my father was a door-to-door embalmer. And there were some fermented guts a little good in that story. And another woman wrote a piece about a pro wrestler whose name was Bad Guts. I thought back to that afternoon and John Kelso complaining about the chitlins. And I wrote, I don't know, 5 or 6 pages of the story, which I didn't finish. Then we move up to like 1998. I got the Dobie Paisano Fellowship, which is a really nice fellowship. There's a writer in Texas named Frank Dobie, and after he passed away in 1964, some rich oil guys bought his ranch up and donated it to the University of Texas to use as a writer's retreat. And so you go in there for 6 months by yourself, and they pay you, and you can quit your job and concentrate on writing. It was really wonderful. So I got out there, and I wanted to get to work on something, and oh, here's 5 or 6 pages of a story I started several years ago. I'll finish it. And so I did. And so I wrote the story, Bad Guts, and I sent it off to an online journal, and it got accepted. It was published. I think you can still find it on the internet if you want to look for it. In fact, I use it sometimes in my classes to show how revision works. This very early version of the story, the one that got published in the book. So then a few more years later, I was a graduate student at Texas A&M University, and we had a graduate student reading. And I read that story, and there was a professor there named Marco Portalis, and Marco said, you know, the ending of that story is not right. You need to do something to it. I go, yeah. And a light bulb came on in my head, and I said, yeah, I thought, yeah, actually it does. It needs to be worked on some more. So I totally redid it. We got a different ending and a different beginning, and I changed the title to Chitterlings, and then I put it in my master's thesis. So it was published then. That was 2005 or something like that. So when I was working with the publisher to get this book together, I included it in the stories I gave Chuck. Chuck Taylor's the publisher, and he hated Chitterlings. He really hated the story. He said he didn't want it in the book. And I said, what's wrong? He said, well, that character, he's just so negative. I hate it. I hate the character. I hate the story. And so I said, well, let me think about this. Get back to work. And so I did another revision on the story. And I didn't change anything about the character. What I added a backup character who's worse than he is, which makes it seem worse. And so in 2009, what I think is the final version of the story came out. And the title this time is just Guts, with a little strike through on it. It's a story about Austin, Texas. Maybe some of you have been there. It's about change coming to Austin. Stranded and carless, victim of a lucky flat tire that kept him from going to work, newspaper columnist Wes Leonard sat in a dark bar, drinking beer after beer and thinking about the dangers of the world. If he leaned back a bit on his stool, he could see out through the thick glass of the door, see the street in front of the tavern, see a pothole in the street. Traffic was roaring along, a blur, and every now and then a car's tire would hit the pothole, a solid thunk. A dangerous, hollow sound he could feel deep in his chest, a sound he knew represented the danger of blowouts and lost lives. There was danger on the streets, he thought. Danger everywhere. Danger. Maybe he could turn that into a story. Jillian the barmaid came over to him. She asked, "You want another?" "Sure," Wes said. He dug around in his change pile and pushed some money over to Jillian. She took his pitcher over to the tap to fill it. Wes said, "You know, I bet if we sat here long enough, somebody would drive over that hole and blow out a tire. Eventually, everybody in town would drive over that hole and blow out a tire." "You sound pretty happy about that," Jillian said. She set the pitcher of beer down in front of him. "Sure," Wes said. "Then nobody would have to go to work." "People would sit at home and starve," Jillian said. "You just want to share your misery." Wes looked at Jillian. "That's an excellent idea," he said. He flipped open his slim reporter's notebook and wrote, "Share the misery." He said, "Maybe I can do something with that." Wes sipped his beer and watched as Jillian turned the notebook around and scratched out, "Share the misery." Then she crossed out, "Danger everywhere," and put a little frowny face next to it. Then she tapped on a word he had written at the top of the page. "Guts." "Guts?" Jillian asked. She said, "Just guts?" "Just guts," Wes repeated. He poured more beer into his mug. "I see," Jillian said. She sat back down on a beer box and looked up at the television. Men were playing golf. "Bad guts," Wes said. Jillian looked at him and blinked. "Oh, of course," she said. "Bad guts. I haven't seen any good guts around here in a long time." "No," Wes said, "I'm serious. These are bad guts. I was supposed to go out to Pflugerville this afternoon to be the celebrity judge at the Greater Southwest International Chitlins Cook-Off and Jamboree. But I got that flat tire, so I'm here." When he stumbled into the bar, hot and sweaty, Wes had ordered beer, then called the newspaper looking for a ride. Now he thought better of that. Really, there was no place he'd rather be on a Saturday afternoon than a dark, cool bar. He pulled out his cell phone to call the paper and cancel his ride. But the phone was dead. The charger went out or something. Oh well, Wes frowned. Chitlins, Jillian said. That's sort of like menudo, right? Wes thought for a moment. Menudo is tripe, I think, beef tripe. Chitlins is chitterlings or something. It comes from pigs. Chitterlings? Wes shrugged. It's all guts, I guess. Jillian asked, so what are hog maws? They're hog, oh hell, I don't know. They're hog somethings. Wes glanced at the television, men playing golf on cool green grass, lucky men, then looked back across the bar at Jillian. Why don't you go out to Pflugerville for me and find out? I have to work, Jillian said. It'd be fun, though. No, Wes said. He shook his head and looked down at the bar. No, it wouldn't be fun. If I end up going, it's not going to be fun, you know? It's going to be deadly out there. It'll be hell. It's 105 degrees outside, and I'm going to be up to my armpits and awful. Jillian said, poor Wes. No kidding, Wes said. He looked at the neon beer sign hanging behind Jillian, a rainbow trout leaping for a mayfly, and he felt sad. He felt like weeping almost. There would be no cool water in Pflugerville, no fame, no fun, just heat and hog guts, chitterlings or chitlins, menudo or hog maws, and whatever that stuff was, and who had wanted to write about any of it? In the 23 years the newspaper had been running his column, he had written about barbecue, chicken, sausage, ribs, brisket, country music, tractor pulls, pro wrestling. He had a fondness for old school wrestlers like Ivan Putski and Mad Dog Rashad. Ice cream, fraternity hijinks, sorority snootiness, the color orange, rodeo, Juneteenth, Confederate Heroes Days, NAACP, the Ku Klux Klan, beer, local beer, imported beer, cold beer, the meaning of beer, homosexuals, lesbians, zoophiles, necrophiles, Aggies, airports in general, the old airport, the new airport, funding for the new airport, the land scandal surrounding the place that almost became the new airport, and why the old airport was better, light bulbs, incandescent versus fluorescent, thunder, lightning, tornadoes, hurricanes, ice storms, floods, droughts, cold heat, rock and roll, nose rings, nipple rings, navel rings, motorcycles, skateboards, inline skates, pogo sticks, cats, dogs, parrots, grackles, ostriches, golden cheek warblers, fire ants, millipedes, cockroaches, mosquitoes, blind salamanders, tooth spiders, carp, trout, bass, catfish, bats, mice, raccoons, possums, lions, tigers, bears, grizzly bears, black bears, and teddy bears, old cars, new cars, art cars, pickup trucks, and diesel mechanics. He had attended the Beautifest, the Worst Fest, the New Highway Fest, the International Barbecue Fest, the Aqua Fest, the Cedar Chopper Fest, the Sorghum Fest, the Pecan Fest, the Cotton Picket Fest, the Very Best Fest, the Locust Fest, the Big Old Bull Fest, the Chigger Fest, the Crappie Fest. Catfish Days, Frontier Days, Cicada Days, Buffalo Days, Pioneer Days, Prickly Pear Days, Crazy Days, the Rattlesnake Roundup, the Chillipiad, the White Bass Run, the Mesquite Burn, and the Skunk Wallow, and Spamorama. He had been to dozens of county fairs and stock shows, dozens. 3 times a week for 23 years, he'd written about colorful, folksy stuff, all kinds of colorful, folksy stuff, and he was popular, and he won awards, and people actually read his column. But colorful and folksy was getting harder to find. The city had changed, and was changing. There are big-ass skyscrapers downtown now, and tech millionaires cruising around in Maseratis, and waves of immigrants from California and Mexico and everywhere else on the planet, seemingly, and it had changed the texture of the town. Colorful and folksy, real colorful and folksy, was getting hard to find. Wes tried a few times to write about the new city he was seeing all around it. He wrote about the gentrification of the east side, and inappropriately huge mansions in old neighborhoods, about traffic, about air and water pollution, about the loss of friendly old bars and restaurants, and the snootiness of new bars and restaurants. He wrote columns about the new city, and nobody liked them. They were downers. They sounded like the carpings of a cranky old man. Nobody wanted to read that. People wanted colorful and folksy. At least from him, they wanted colorful and folksy. So he went back to recycling old topics. In the end, all it got him was a gig as a celebrity judge at the Greater Southwest Chitlins Cook-Off in Jamboree. We've got the 17th largest city in America, Wes said. And there's going to be all these people running around out there worrying about hog guts. That's what makes Austin fun, Jillian said. It's weird. It's all a big lie, Wes said, and I'm a big liar. Poor Wes, Jillian said again. You're just feeling sorry for yourself. Well, if you were me, you'd feel sorry for me too. No, Jillian said, I probably wouldn't. Wes just stared at her. Really, she said, I wouldn't feel sorry for you. You're part of the problem, Wes said. He took a sip of beer and looked at the television. Some rich bastard was putting. He said, this is going to be the worst day of my life. The very worst day. 3 hours later, Wes came out of the bathroom and saw that someone was sitting next to his stool. It was Heather Kim, the photographer from the newspaper, his ride. He quickly thought about turning around and going back into the toilet to hide, but then Heather saw him. Hey there, Heather said, am I late? Wes felt gloomy. He'd been getting into the rhythm bar, drinking beer, getting teased by Jillian, looking at televised golf, listening to the soft click of balls on the pool table. Saturday afternoon and nothing to do but drink. Saturday afternoon and air conditioning. Saturday afternoon and no chitlins. But now Heather was here and he might have to do something. Work, eat chitlins. Wes sat back down next to her and said, I was hoping you were lost. I have a good sense of direction, Heather said. She wheeled around on the stool looking at the dim bar. She asked, do you hang out here? I don't hang out, Wes said. Jillian said, oh, he comes by every now and then to share his misery. Wes felt hurt. I have a right to be miserable, he thought. Flat tires, chitlins, heat, now Heather Kim. She was young and relentlessly cheerful, an excellent photographer, an artist, really, who specialized in car wrecks. She was kind of creepy, too, Wes thought, with that wreck thing. The whole area around her desk was plastered with photos of wrecks, torn up bodies, mangled machines, bloody pavement, lives lost, dreams lost. Every time Wes walked by her desk, she would shove prints of car wrecks at him. Wes remembered looking at one particularly disturbing, twisting metal death trap and saying, holy shit, what were the casualties? 5, I think. The whole family got wiped out. It was terrible. Heather had slowly grinned at the photo, though, grinned until all Wes could see of her face was dimples and teeth. She asked, isn't it a great picture? At the bar, Wes sighed and looked at the television, more putting. He felt depressed. I have to go to work, he thought. Heather asked, are you about ready? Wes didn't say anything. He bolted the last of his beer and stood up unsteadily and looked around. He thought, I don't want to go anywhere. Not today. Jillian was sitting across the bar from her on her beer box. She said, bring me back some chitlins. Wes said, you're insane. He followed Heather out of the bar. Outside, the heat hit him like a hammer. The concrete of the sidewalk, the asphalt of the pothole-riddled street, it all seemed to bubble and shimmer and shine under the white heat of the sun. After a moment, even Wes felt like he was shimmering, though he wasn't sure it was from the heat or from the beer he'd down. He was sure, though, that it was unpleasant. He put his hand on Heather's shoulder. There's a reason bars are air-conditioned, he said. Yeah? Heather looked at him, puzzled. I guess. Chitlin festivals aren't air-conditioned. Wes looked up and down the shimmery street, imagining a world without air conditioning. Desolate, he thought, depopulated, hot and empty, and left to nature. No chitlin festivals either. Where are you parked, Heather asked. Parked? Wes blinked at her. My car, the tire. Yeah, I know, Heather said, but I want to see it. Right, Heather and her creepy-ass wreck fetish. Wes got into her car, directed her up a hilly side street to where his own car was parked. Just where he left it, under a wilting live oak, the sad-looking car battered and listing toward the curb on the right side. Heather rolled down her window and looked at the car. Why don't you just change the tires, she asked. I can't, Wes said. I'm driving on the spare. It's the spare that's flat. That stupid goddamn donut tire. You've been driving on it for 6 months. I'd already got 2 columns out of the damn thing. Now maybe he can get a third. Wes got out and went over to his car. There was a leaky cooler of malt liquor in the back seat, the moldy back seat. When he pulled out the 12-pack, he saw that Heather was aiming a camera at him. He wobbled backwards. Oh, come on, he said, don't. We need to document the moment, Heather said. Smile. Wes's contact at the Chitlins Festival was a man named Ben Henderson. They talked a few times on the phone, and Henderson had been pleasantly cheerful, as if nothing could upset him. A happy man, a small business owner, a churchgoer, something like that. He was folksy. When Wes found Henderson standing at the gate of the Chitlins Festival, he saw that he was right. Henderson was a happy, heavy black man with a baseball cap on his head and a pig-shaped badge on his chest. He stood greeting people cheerfully. Wes thought that something must be wrong. Glad to see you, Henderson said. We were starting to worry. Car problems, Wes said. Car problems always explained everything, he'd found. Car problems were even better than the stomach flu when dodging appointments or running late, especially when the car problems were real. So what's the deal with this jamboree, huh? You're celebrating Chitlins? Right, Henderson said. The committee wants to draw attention to our heritage, you know? Yeah, Wes said. All these festivals look to the past. to something that might have existed once. He looked around Henderson to what he could see at the festival, people milling around, puffs of smoke drifting toward him. Wes felt his stomach turn over and rumble. He hadn't had anything to eat all day except a bag of pretzels he shared with Jillian at the bar. He was surprisingly hungry. Henderson was talking. And the proceeds all go to a scholarship fund. You're not taking notes? What? Wes asked. Oh. He looked down, saw that he was holding his closed notebook in one hand and a 24-ounce can of malt liquor in the other. He handed the can to Heather and opened his notebook. Then he slapped his shirt pocket looking for a pen. No pen. Must have looked at the bar. He asked Heather, you got a spare pen? No. Heather dumped the warm beer into a trash can. Wes looked at Henderson. Pen? Maybe you can call me back later for a quote or something, Henderson said. I'll look around and see if I can find you a pen for the judging, though. The judging, Wes repeated, his heart sank. Oh, yeah, I'm a judge. Sober like a judge, at least, huh? Henderson was grinning at him. Wes suddenly felt like crying. The sun was beating down on his head and depression rose around him and he felt lost and feverish. To hell with this, I thought. I don't want to be here. But he had nowhere else to go, and no way to go anyplace else. Wes could feel his lower lip pulling down, could feel Heather and Henderson staring at him. He didn't want to move. Come on, Wes, Heather said. Let's go see some guts. After a moment, Wes followed Henderson and Heather through the gate and under the bleachers and out onto the asphalt track that ran around the football field. There were 4 or 5 dozen booths set up on the sidelines of the football field facing the track, each booth with a big pot of chitlins, many people cooking over smoky wood fires. Some making barbecue as well, the people at each booth in crazy costumes, music blaring from jam boxes, smoke rising into the pale hot sky. A band had set up under the north goalpost, and though Wes could not clearly hear or understand the music, he did see a few fools jumping around, dancing in the hot sun. Some sort of frisbee dog contest was taking place on the football field itself. Stupid people hurling plastic discs in the air, dogs jumping and barking and panting. 4 or 5 joggers were doing their laps around the track going pretty fast up the far side of the field, but slowing and fighting their way through the chitlins crowd on the near side. Occasionally the wind would shift and clouds of chitlin smoke blew down the track like a smoke screen. Runners and chitlins people in costume would come bursting through the smoke at unexpected times, screaming, attempting to sound like foghorns. There were collisions. Wes saw one runner hurdle a baby carriage and slam into an old man wearing a Texas A&M baseball cap, knocking him down and then disappearing around the bend of the track. The old Aggie slowly staggered to his feet and headed in the direction of the booth proclaiming Department of Public Safety hog maws. Then he vanished into the smoke. The baby was left unattended and began to cry. All up and down the row of booths, it seemed like people were chanting, chitlins, 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 chitlins. Wes felt doomed. Henderson pinned a hog-shaped badge to Wes's shirt that read Chitlins Judge. Wes didn't say anything. He still just felt sad. It's come to this, he thought. I am at the end of the line. I, too, am colorful and folksy. I am the Chitlins Judge. There you go, Wes, Henderson said. I suppose for right now you can just wander around and look things over. Remember, when you get around to doing the serious judging, you judge on taste, texture, and showmanship. Wes said, showmanship. Yeah, the costumes, the booths, the music. Wes took a deep breath and looked at the mob of Chitlins fans. Crazy people, he thought. Folksy crazy. I'll have to deal with folksy crazy people in the sun. The afternoon stretched out ahead of him in his imagination. He could tell the day would never end. Wes said, I'll need drinks. Henderson laughed and disappeared. Wes looked around. Heather had driven 50 or so yards down the track making photographs. A cloud of smoke obscured her. Wes was glad. He wanted to stay as far away from her as possible. She was scary. He started down the row of booths. The first one was run by a group of people in pirate costumes. They had a sign over the booth. Walk the plank for our chitlins. They had a Jolly Roger flying over the booth. Wes smiled. He liked pirates. They seemed to have interesting lifestyles. Ride around in a boat all day, sleep till noon, drink free rum. Our shipmates, he said. The pirates looked back at him blankly. A little boy pirate waved his sword and screamed wordlessly. Wes felt uncomfortable. Henderson appeared with a 6-pack of beer. Here you go. Wes quickly slammed one of the beers, then opened another. He left the unfriendly pirates and wandered along the row of booths, dangling the beers by the plastic 6-pack rings. Not everyone in costume, which made things less confusing to look at, though there were enough cowboys and soldiers roaming around the field to make a movie or a war. But now that he was here and had some beer, he hoped he could relax. you hope you can avoid the dread, but maybe not.